Doing it.
Okay. Just making sure I'm checking. Yep. All right. Welcome to Gemcast Live number 14. With me today is JonResnickWriting, and he is going to give an introduction to his story, and then he will narrate a chapter for us. So, without further ado, JonResnickWriting.
Well, thank you for the warm introduction, everybody who showed up. Thank you. I appreciate it. Means a lot that you want to, hear a little bit about the story. I spent about 10 years kind of slow crafting this series. And this is from book one in the series. I have the first two done. I'm about to get cracking on the third before I relaunch on Royal Road. Um, so, what the story or book one is about is just to read off this. Fraternal twins Ash and Jacob Owens are ripped from Earth and thrust into Fulna, a world on the brink of war. When their summoning is sabotaged by a mysterious traitor, they're left stranded in the perilous northern territories, hunted by an enemy with a single purpose: slaughter. As they fight for their lives, rescue arrives in the form of a small ragtag military squadron whose captain, Athena, finally reveals why they were summoned. Long ago, a god bonded itself to the soul of the twins' ancestor, giving him the power to banish an ancient evil from Fulna. Now that evil has returned and the body count is rising. The god's soul, passed down through their family line, has split itself between the twins, making Ash and Jacob the only ones with the power to win the war, but only if they can awaken what lies dormant within. Their new allies race to deliver them to a town south of the mountain range that divides the continent, where they expect a military train to take the brothers to safety. But the horrors that await Ash and Jacob are beyond anything Athena and her squadron could have foreseen. Should the brothers fail to stop the threat that has descended upon this world, all of the 10 realms will soon meet their end, and Earth's realm will be the next to fall. And going into this chapter, because it's still early in book one, this is the brothers have been summoned from their home. They were going to work that night at their family's dojo, and everything went horribly wrong. They got ripped away from their family, and everybody saw and was hurt in the process. And they just woke up stranded in the middle of nowhere. Athena's team was contacted, as they're the only ones still alive in that region, and tasked to go recover the brothers. And this is where we pick up.
All right. Do we have like a screen share where you can like put up the Google Doc? If that is
Yeah,
possible.
one second. I actually like to read off of Living Writer right here. It blows up a little bit easier for me. Let's see if the Google Doc does better. 1 second. Hidden Gems chapter. See how this blows up versus this. Yeah, I'll just do it on here. Okay, 1 second. Let's see, screen share. Let's see. Wonder which screen it's going to share because I have 2 screens on here.
Oh, it's going to give
Uh,
you an option.
yeah. Would like to record this computer screen audio. Grant access to this. Yeah, that's fine. I have to open system settings. Apologize for this, guys. Discord. There it
No, no
is.
problem. Like we're kind of like, with Jake not being available, we're kind of piecing things together.
May not be able to record the contents of your screen until it is quit. Okay. It's saying I have to quit and reopen
We don't have
Discord.
you don't have to worry about it, I guess. I guess we could just move forward.
I apologize about that.
No, no
Uh,
problem.
Pop out of this. I was not even letting me now. There we go. Okay. So, chapter 6 Run. Baylor, 20th day of Silvershine, year 1011 of the Custorian calendar. We had been driving since last night toward the area we suspected the Guardian to be located. Athena had ordered me to stop for half the night inside the holler. Since I was our tracker, my mind and senses needed to be sharp. Once we got closer to our destination, I climbed up and took my position on the small seat mounted to the roof. I occasionally looked around with my farsights and frequently smelled the air for any unusual scents, searching for anything useful. But I didn't get anything out of the ordinary. All I saw was open grassland and a forest far off in the distance to our right. After a few hours, I started to think that maybe Horace was wrong, that the Guardian wasn't anywhere near here. But I cast that thought aside immediately. He wouldn't make a mistake. Not him. Thena had introduced me to Horace and his husband a little over 2 years ago. They were both super kind and, despite my circumstances, even opened up their home to me. They gave me a place to live when I had nowhere else to go. I trust him with my life. A little after 4 in the afternoon, I finally caught something. It smelled burnt. I think I have something. It's directly ahead, I said into the small transvox that was clipped to my jacket. The hauler slowed to a stop a few minutes later, and I climbed down. Thena stopped her speeder beside a large burnt circle in the grass. A few meters away from the circle, there was a small, empty black duffel bag. Oh my gods, this is happening. We are going to meet the Guardian. Thena flipped open her visor. Are you able to get his scent? Shouldn't be a problem. I ran over to the duffel and sniffed it up and down. The smells of 2 people and some sumita flower that had been stored in the bag flooded my nose. I crouched and smelled the ground near where I was standing. Nothing. It must have been thrown from the circle, I realized. I dropped the bag and walked to the scorched grass, where I lowered down to my hands and feet, crawling over the burnt markings and sniffing the ground. I hoped to figure out which scent had been the Guardian's and where they'd walked off to. Instead, I became confused. Well, that can't be right. I backed up a few feet and smelled a wider area. Oh, crud. Thena, we might have a problem. I sat on my haunches and looked at her. I thought you said there was only one person being summoned. Thena straightened up. What are you talking about? There were definitely 2 people who came out of this circle. The scents are very similar, so I'm guessing they're related? Her eyes widened as she looked back at the burnt grass. God damn it! They dragged an innocent into this. Can you track them? Yes, ma'am, I replied, placing a fist over my heart. I crept along the grass for another minute to be certain of which way they had gone. Once I had it, we were off. Luckily, they were upwind from us, so it only took about 20 minutes before the scent of 2 people with smoky clothes began to reach my nose. I put the far sights to my eyes. In the distance, 2 figures were running toward the forest. The smile on my face went from ear to ear. I'd found them. My hand reached for the transvox, and then the breeze kicked up again. My smile vanished. The hair on my tail bristled and a low growl rumbled in my chest. There was another scent coming from that direction. 1 second. Jacob, 20th day of Silvershine, year 1011 of the Custorian calendar. Have I ever told you how much I hate cardio? I shouted. Almost daily, Ash answered. He sounded annoyed, but not because of my question. It had only taken a few minutes of running before he started bitching about his backpack swinging side to side and how I was a massive pain in the ass. I wouldn't say it, but that was the real reason I ditched my bag and made him the designated pack mule. Running with a bag on your back fucking sucked. The noise was getting closer, and while I'd figured out which direction it was coming from, I still couldn't see the source. Wait, is that? Yeah, that's 2 different engines. The sound suddenly got louder, as though the drivers had stepped on the accelerator. Whoever was coming our way might not have the best intentions, so we needed to get out of sight as fast as possible. We made it to the trees faster than I thought we would. The funny thing was that my breathing wasn't any more labored than when we'd been walking. I was sweaty as hell, not even remotely winded. It was like I hadn't just run my ass off for 10 minutes straight. My heart rate hadn't increased much either. Probably all the extra training I've been doing lately. About 20 feet into the tree line, we crouched behind a few thick thorn bushes that stood a little shorter than chest height. Just observe, right? Ash asked. Yeah, we have no clue if who or whatever the fuck that is wants to eat us. If they're chill, we'll make contact. Otherwise, we'll just follow them towards civilization. 2 vehicles approached in the distance, A small one and a much larger one, but I couldn't make out any details beyond that. They were heading straight toward us, and it looked like the small one was racing ahead of the big one. Was it being chased? Beside me, Ash's grip on the backpack straps grew tighter. Both vehicles were booking it, and they were getting and the closer they got, the faster my heart beat from the anxiety surging through me. I wiped the sweat from my brow and tried to steady myself. Just focus on the forest, Jacob. Breathe in the calming smells of the dirt and the pine trees. Listen to the leaves and the breeze. The birds chirping and playing above you. The branches snapping behind you. Wait, hold up. Ash perked up too when he heard the branch snap. We slowly turned. Something was walking among the trees, back where the forest canopy kept light from reaching the ground. I could only see its outline, and whatever it was looked to be around the same height and build as me. Thank God we aren't the only humans here. Ash and I looked at each other and then back at the being in the forest as we stood. I raised a hand to my mouth and yelled, "Hello? Hey, do you speak English?" Whatever was walking around stopped, turned toward us, and started coming our way. Quickly. "Jacob? I don't think that's a person," Ash said as we both took a step backward. The insect-like creature marked out of the dark section of the forest and into the light. It was at that exact moment that we both knew I had fucked up royally. Making a beeline toward us was a brownish, black-skinned monstrosity. It stood almost as tall as us and had a very muscular physique. Its form was human-like overall. It stood on two legs, had two arms with human-like hands and one head. But that was where the similarities ended. The clawed hands had too many fingers. Black, tarry lips pulled back to reveal a large mouth full of sharp and jagged yellow teeth. Two red eyes with slit-shaped irises flicked back and forth between us as huge razor-like mandibles clacked in front of its mouth. Once. Twice. "Fucking hell, you're ugly," I mumbled. The creature shrieked in rage and charged with alarming speed. It took 3 running steps and lunged, diving headfirst at us with clawed hands outstretched. I dove right, and Ash left, barely avoiding the attack as the creature crashed into the thorny bush behind us. "What the hell is that thing?" The creature leaped to its feet and immediately turned towards me. "Of course," I grumbled, bringing my hands up and backing away. It sprang forward, attacking relentlessly. Its claws tore through the air with incredible speed. I dodged as best I could, but I barely kept up. A rush of air pushed against me as each strike missed by less than an inch. The only reason I managed to avoid the strike so far was it telegraphed each one with its body movement. Over and over it tried to rip into me with those freaky hands, all while making a god-awful chittering sound. Its right shoulder twitched just before a strike. The creature slashed at me diagonally from the left, and I parried the attack, sending its arm far to my right and leaving the monster off balance. The skin on its arm felt like some kind of smooth, chitinous shell. "Fuck you!" I shouted, throwing a hard right straight. The punch connected perfectly between its demonic eyes. The creature stumbled back a step, and I winced from the impact. It felt like I just punched a brick wall. Shaking my hand out, I hopped backward to create some space between me and whatever the fuck this thing was. The creature cocked its head and stared at me. As its mandibles twitched quickly in annoyance and its eyes narrowed, my eyes widened. The realization finally sank in that this thing really might kill me. But we weren't going to give it a chance. "Any time now!" I yelled. With a furious shout, Ash slammed a large piece of wood down onto the back of its head. The wood snapped in half with a loud crack, and the monster dropped to the ground. I kicked it in the head repeatedly and shouted every profanity I knew, while Ash looked for another weapon. We both froze when we heard the chittering sound. It wasn't coming from the monster below me. My head turned and a pit of ice formed in my stomach. High up the trunk of a tree that stood 20 feet away, none of those things was watching us. It clung to the trunk, upside down, claws securely dug into the wood. A horrific shriek filled the air, and Ash shouted, "Run!" He snatched his backpack off the ground as we sprinted toward the tree line. Behind us came a heavy thud as the creature landed on the ground. Glancing back, I saw that both of them were chasing after us and gaining. This forest is bullshit. Why would you tell us to come here? I snapped at Ash as we raced past the final trees. Me? Coming here was your idea! Behind us, the monster screamed and erupted from the forest. A short distance ahead of us were two vehicles. The one coming to a stop was a large RV that looked like it was built in the 1980s. It was painted with dark green, brown, and black camouflage pattern, and someone was standing on the roof. The large, rugged motorcycle that was already parked was painted the same way. It reminded me of the light cycles from Tron, but the more pressing issue was that running straight at us, wearing a black riding suit with red and white trim, was the motorcycle's rider. Their face was concealed by a matte black helmet. It was their hands that captured my focus. More specifically, what was in their hands. They ran leaning forward with both hands back, each one carrying a thin sword that was maybe 3 feet long. The tip of each blade traced the ground as they ran between us and toward the monsters. Ash and I slid to a stop and turned back to watch. The head of the first creature was already halfway to the ground, and dark purple blood geysered from its neck as the body collapsed. The rider ran straight to the second bug monster. It shrieked in rage, and a clawed hand lashed out, coming in from the side. The swordsman pivoted quickly, slicing down with one sword, severing the creature's arm cleanly at the elbow. The arm flew several feet before it bounced along the grassy ground. The creature screamed and recoiled, and then it lashed out again, swiping at the person's helmet with its remaining hand. Our savior leaned far back and twisted their body. They stabbed their other swords straight up under the attacker's extended arm, and the blade went straight through the creature's skull. A moment passed, and the swordmen straightened back up, jerking their arm back and drawing the weapon. The creature collapsed into a heap on the ground, twitching as blood pumped from its wounds. Our savior flourished their swords, casting blood from the blades as they stared at the corpse by their feet. And that's the end of the chapter.
Fantastic expression. Like that was like well read, like I felt the tension rising. I think the heartbeat went up a little bit. So like yeah, I excuse me. I think you definitely like, found a way to narrate in a manner to keep the excitement building, and the British accent was a pleasant throw in.
The which one?
The British accent was like a nice was a nice touch.
Oh, thank you. I hope it wasn't too painful to hear that.
I'm just kind of like okay. If anybody has any questions, please like provide them. Like they'll be very helpful. So we don't have to just sit here and yap the whole time. However, I will say this. Yeah, I thought it was great. Like the way it was read definitely helped, keep the tension flowing. And I was wondering, like, what inspired you? Where did you draw your inspiration for this work?
I just saw that there's actually a chat. I'll have to go through here, and thank you for the compliments, guys. I do appreciate that. I'll go back here and read through these in a little bit. As far as inspiration, like I was saying, it was a slow cook for creating this series, and over about 10 years, I just came up with scenes and ideas of what I wanted to create for what would be like the ultimate like adventure with heartbreak and tragedy, trauma, and overcoming it. And that's one thing with this story is there's a lot of touching into trauma and mental health and things like that. And every one of the mains in this story, because it's told from multiple perspectives, everybody's broken in some way and has to rebuild themselves. Um, so I drew from my own history for some of those, as well as, like I was saying, just things that I've seen in cinema or read in other books growing up. I was like, that's kind of a cool jumping point, but I think it would be a lot better if you actually changed all of this around. And things that inspired me growing up, because I've been reading fantasy and stuff since I was a little kid. A lot of Stephen King is a lot of inspiration for me, because I do a lot of horror chapters in these books. Um, but really, it's just about 2.5, 3 years ago. I still hadn't been able to put the series together. And sorry for rambling. But I finally figured out the one puzzle piece I was missing, and then all the stuff I'd come up with over 10 years clicked into place. Because I hadn't considered doing, because I was looking at it as like, this doesn't work if it's just in a fantasy world. But then I considered actually isekaiing two brothers. And everything that I'd done over 10 years just snapped into place. And I sat down and mapped out for the series perfectly, and I just started writing, and there it was.
I thought one of the aspects that really shone was the voices of the characters. Like, in addition to the narrative aspect, where they sounded different, like the way they were written was different. I thought the other perspective starting from the journal entry was cool because, like, in the beginning, you have like one character that's going to be like, trekking, and then you have like another character, but it's also, you also introduce it with like the similar, like, oh, the day of, and it's kind of like I liked it. Lucia asked about like your professional background. Um, Wait, I'm sorry, let me go back to that. No, Lucia asked about writing character voices. Ayala asked about your professional background. So I guess we should touch on both of them. Like, it does definitely come across that like you do some type of speaking professionally. Like, can you touch on that a little bit?
I actually don't do professional speaking. I'm a nurse
Wow.
in the operating room. But I do enjoy public speaking. I always have since I was a kid. I like doing voices. I have a 3-year old daughter and a newborn son. He's only about 4 months old now. But for my daughter, I'll do voices when I'm reading for her just because it keeps me fresh with it. Um, but no, my professional background isn't necessarily in writing. I have had two short stories published this fall in separate anthologies. Um, and so I'm very proud of that. And I've been trying to get this series picked up. Uh, everybody who's read it's absolutely loved the material that I've shown them, but it's just hard to necessarily get attention when you don't have a lot of stuff previously published or an academic background in writing and stuff like that. So I understand it. Understand we all have that uphill challenge that we're dealing with, and it sucks. But I'm probably going to end up relaunching on Royal Road because I did a stub there. I'm going to probably relaunch sometime next year and just self-publish at this point because it's a story that I believe in and I want to get out there. Uh,
I'm gonna DM you afterwards because some of us are actually I don't know, like, actually the timing probably wouldn't matter, but like we've kind of discovered a platform, and I want to see what you think about
yeah, shoot.
potentially your interest in it. So I wanted to get back to the voices. Like, do you have any advice on writing character voice? Because
Yeah,
that's definitely something that comes across as a strength of yours.
yeah, that's one thing too that you're not the first person to say that. But a lot of people who have read my stuff, they compliment how the dialogue reads as organic and natural and how it really seems like different characters. And I watched a master class from Neil Gaiman about a year or so ago, and he said it the best, loosely quoting him, is that writing from multiple points of view is like a low grade form of insanity. And I have to agree with him because I'll spend about half an hour before I really start writing new material, reading old stuff in that character's uh, point of view, so that way I can get back in their head. And I'll go through and I'll think, what would this person say? Like, what would their motivation be? How would they react to this? And it takes a lot of revisions to make sure you're staying true to that character's voice. Like, it takes a lot of revisions. You're not always going to hit it on the first one if you've come off another person's chapter and you're continuing on. And that's one thing too is if you get in that character's head and you start writing something draws you away from your writing station, you're going to need some time to get back into that necessarily because you might start writing in your own voice versus that character's. But it's very important to kind of think about that character's motivation versus another's and how they would react, be it aggressively or painfully to something somebody may say or do. And for example, one of my characters, one of my probably my favorite character to write in this series besides Jacob is Aphelion. She's a demon woman and she's you know shunned by her entire race because it's kind of a misogynistic race. The only person who ever believed in her was her father, who's now deceased. and it's just because she wanted to choose to not be in the household and be subservient. She was strong as shit, and she wants to be a warrior. So she's following her path, which is also the path that her father, who um, was the now dead king of that race, believed in, and he wanted her to, be the inspiration for that change. So whenever she sees somebody doing something and looking at her a certain way when they might mean well, she is very reactive because she's been so verbally abused her whole life. She'll take offense to it when really it was a compliment, for example. Versus if Thena heard that, she would think it was a compliment, or this person. So you have to kind of categorize how somebody might react to different things.
I
And again, it's
appreciate
going to
that
take a lot of
actually.
revisions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, obviously, having lived life, and I could reflect back on certain experiences, and how like my background going in shaped the interaction. Like that, that's pretty insightful. I wanted to ask about how you had said that when you had made the realization to Isekai the brothers, that was like your eureka moment and everything clicked together. Like what do you think triggered it? And do you remember how that happened to really tie in together this process of yours?
I don't remember the exact thing that really triggered that so much. I was probably sitting down and watching some anime or something, and I was just like, that's kind of cool with the isekai thing, the fantasy world and all that. And then I started thinking about all the stuff I'd been writing, and I was like, would that work for this? For the thing that I had tentatively been creating. And I was just like, this actually does. So, I went ahead and ran with that. And But yeah, and sometimes it just takes that one thing that's missing, and it might just be staring you in the face the whole time. Like, always been a big manga and anime fan, and it was just a good day that it clicked. That's all it was. It was just a good day, good moment, and I decided to follow through with the thought. I just pushed pause on the TV, went down, sat at my desk, and penned it out versus just saying, man, whatever. I'm just gonna think about it later. Sometimes when you have an idea, you got to leap on it, otherwise you're gonna lose it. And it blossomed into something wonderful.
Hey John, if you want to get the link and put it in the chat, because like a couple of the our audience had mentioned asked or asked sorry asked for it. So like I'll
Yeah,
yap if you can do that in the meantime. Yeah, this was a hidden gem of a of a gemcast. Like I didn't know what to expect coming in because our usual narrator is not available, and as a matter of fact, like anybody else that's done it, it was going to be kind of like, well, they're they're not around. So, but when, he and I had, just popped in together to just see how things are going to be, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a pleasant surprise. Like, so I got a kick out of it. So, yeah, we will, like, we're going to go into the process to like create everything for the YouTube. It will be up. It'll probably be up tomorrow as far as the announcement and the YouTube by the time everybody gets back with everything. But yeah, thank you for reading. Thank you for writing the story. It was an exciting listen.
thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I put the link there. It's an 8 chapter stub on Royal Road. I'm on the final revision for the last few chapters of book 2 right now. When I get about 10 chapters into book 3, I'm going to start looking to set up all the shout out swaps and relaunch and do all that stuff.
So for
Um,
everybody, when were you thinking of? I know you have the stub up right now. When were you thinking of relaunching the story about?
Probably March-ish or April at the latest is what I'm shooting for. I just want to make sure that I actually have a decent understanding on like the self-publishing process and like crowdsourcing funds that I might need for getting like a audiobook narrator because I feel like I could do some of the voices, but I feel like there are people who have better equipment, software, and do this professionally that would do a better job. And I really want this to have the best shot it can possibly have to get out there to the world in the best form that it deserves. Um, but I'll definitely be making sure to be vocal about when that relaunch is happening for everybody. And if anybody has any more questions for me, feel free to DM me. I try to get back to people as soon as I can. If I'm working at the hospital, obviously I can't pop out to get on Discord. Plus, for some reason, it doesn't work on that internet there. But I do try and be responsive with people whenever I can be.
Okay, so with that will conclude our Gemcast today. Just everybody, just pay attention. The YouTube will be up probably tomorrow, and as John said, you can DM him any further questions that you have. Thank you for coming, and John, thank you for writing the story. Anything else from you before we close?
No, I really appreciate everybody popping in. I appreciate all the kind words and that you enjoyed it. Um, yeah, that's all I can really think of. And sorry again, I couldn't have the chapter up for everybody to look at it. I didn't know that it would need me to reset Discord to get that permission in for some reason. I apologize.
Okay, so thank you, and good night, everybody.